Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to Let's Talk Maywood on Diversity Today Media. I'm your host, Dr. Reggie Ratliff. And joining me at this time is investment advisor, expert portfolio manager, the man with the plan with money, and my co host, again, Mr. Terrence Hollisworth. Terry, are you there?
Hello, how's everybody doing this evening?
Forget about the intro. By now,
Look,
everybody know who we are. Everybody knows about Maywood. Shoot,
I was like,
how's it
where's
going?
the intro? Then all of a sudden, here you come.
I saw live. I was like, well, let me start talking. Boom. Yes, sir. So what's been going on with you and your travels?
Oh man, last month I've probably been at home for about a week. That's it, but I like it. Came from Arizona last week and you know, it was nice weather, and I came home and, came home to snow and cold weather. So that's
Wow.
trash.
Total opposite. Look, they so tomorrow we're expecting like up to 2 inches in the Northern Virginia area, and there's already a 2 hour delay. um,
Wow.
up to 2 inches. So Um, so they may close the school altogether. Depends on how much it snows overnight. But back home, 2 inches, man, you better get out of here with that.
You
You
got
know,
that right.
yeah. But our superintendent in Prince William County is Dr. Latanya McDade. She's a Whitney Young graduate. She also went to Southern Illinois, I believe. But she's all about positivity, and she might not go anything beyond 2 hours. So I'm expecting to be there, 2 hours late, and get ready for school and wrestling practice.
Yeah. So, here's the thing, right? You're in the new school. Tell us how that's going. And, even in terms of the financial education, I think we're good. We're about ready to launch.
Well, I tell you, working in a private school like I did the past previous 6 years, King Abdullah Academy was just a wealth. It was just a massive wealth. There was a lot of high earners, a lot of people from Saudi Arabia working for the embassy, and kids. They're elite kids as far as finances, and the Saudi government supported the school, gave roughly $13 million a year towards operations, and the parents paid the other 13 million to run the school. So it was ran on money, state of the art facilities. The mindset was pretty good overall. They wanted to get education, whether they're here in the United States temporarily or they're going back to Saudi after they graduate with their parents, or Jordan, or northern Egypt, or whatever they live, Palestine. But here in my school in Prince William County, it's a public school. It's a Title One school. It's a large Hispanic population. Unlike King Abdul Academy, was mostly Saudi and Muslims. But here's a mixture. It's more diverse here. It's about 2,600 students at the school, compared to like a total of 600 from K through 12.
Wow.
So more blue collar for sure. But I'm enjoying the experience. I went to Proviso East High School, as people know. It was a working class community, Maywood, and it was a working class school. So, I see it preparing me. So, doing that and being on the head wrestling coach for the girls team and assistant wrestling coach for varsity, I'm excited. We had our first match on Tuesday. It was a jamboree. It was our school and three other schools. We came out really good, looking spun like a rose. So
So you built for it, ain't you?
I'm built for it, baby. Hey, I love it. I love the fact that I'm in a school, and if a kid is not on his game, if he's not locked in academically, all a teacher has to do is email me. Dr. Ratliff, somebody's acting out. I go right to him and say, hey, code of conduct. We don't need you that bad, but we want you to be successful because you have potential. So that's what I grew up, at
Yeah.
Horizon Weeks and Garfield, just say real quick, condolences to Dina Curry, Antoine Curry, and the Curry and Mix family on the loss of our beloved James Mix. He was a seventh grade teacher. He was from Mississippi, so he came up to the north to Maywood, Garfield Elementary with that no nonsense, but I care about you attitude. He passed away recently. I think they just funeralized him earlier this week. And he was beloved by the community and the school. He was also a basketball coach. So may he rest in peace, and the family during this time of grief, and hope God gives you peace and love, and to be able to remember him for the great man that he was.
Yeah. So listen, I'm gonna get off here. We normally talk about finance, but I'm
Yeah,
curious
but I
what
gotta
you.
ask you this question. I gotta ask you this.
Okay.
With everything going on with headset and this legal kill with the Venezuelan, drug boat or whatever. How do you think that impact our country and maybe our relations to Venezuela? You know what's going on in the news,
Yeah, I guess what they talk about drugs, I talk about oil. You know what I mean?
right?
Venezuela is a oil-rich
It is
country. And whether it's Saudi Arabia, whether it's Venezuela,
right.
guess what? Controlling the oil flow of oil worldwide, I think, has a lot to do with it. You hear the difference in the administration where Biden was trying to move us towards away from oil. It seems like Trump is trying to move us towards oil
Mm-hmm.
by getting rid of the subsidies for electric vehicles and things
Mm-hmm.
like this. And so, with anything, as a coach, one of the things that we always talk about is what you control the things that you control. You can't control what the referee is doing.
Right.
You can't control what the other team is doing or whatever, even your own teammates.
Right.
And that applies to us when it comes to the world of finance and how we deal with our communities.
Yeah.
We can't necessarily inflict or influence what happened in Washington with Donald Trump and things like this, but we can understand it, how it influences our finances
Yeah.
and make the appropriate adjustments. And so, um, I'm always going to stay in that lane and say, focus on understanding finances well. Don't get a 50-year mortgage, it's dumb.
Woo.
Don't get a 10-year car payment, that's
Right.
dumb, right?
Yeah.
And if you can do those things, you can come out financially ahead. But as anything,
Great advice.
please invest.
Yeah, absolutely. Great advice, brother. You and I, just so you know, the public know, Terry and I have been working together for over 20 years. And we always, we focus on finance and just the world around us, especially those who are trying to, get ahead financially. So we're going to start an investment club in the near future at a high school. And we're going to teach the youth about finance and starting your own business and the importance of investing as opposed to putting your money in a savings account where you practically earn little interest, no interest actually. So we're going to continue to do the work that God has blessed us. Terry has a gift in finance and investing. He's offering his service for free. So we've taken advantage of Terry and his gift for over 20 years. So I'm grateful, brother, and keep up the great work in the world of finance.
Man, I appreciate it. At some point, we'll talk about some of the work because I think our students are having a phenomenal experience in terms of investing, and we have to advance these conversations at the high school and middle school level,
Indeed.
and get our students comfortable with the lingo so that
Right.
they are putting money away, and so. As I sign off, I'm going to front run Trustee Jones, and he talks about Walter and his involvement. I hope you guys get a chance to have that conversation as well. So,
Indeed.
uh, see you guys later.
My brother. All right. So as Terry just mentioned, we have our guest. He's been on here a few times in the past, and we're always grateful to have him on our podcast. I'd like to bring on Trustee, the Honorable Trustee Miguel Jones, the Village of Maywood. Trustee Miguel Jones. Trustee Jones, good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm well, Dr. Ratliff. It's good to see you again. Thanks for
Yes,
having me.
sir. It's good to see you as always, and the work that you're doing in Maywood, in the village, and for the constituents, and just moving the Village of Maywood forward. Terry mentioned something about Walther. Are you doing something special with Walther? I just wanted to ask you about that.
Yes, so I actually haven't made an official announcement yet, but I guess I will now.
You heard it first on
live
Let's Go
on
Maywood.
right. Yeah. So back in August, I was voted in by the Board of Education for my alma mater, Walter Christian Academy, to join the Board of Education. And so,
Nice.
that was a really exciting and honor to accept that role. And so I'll be serving as the board treasurer. And so, I'm really, really excited about that, and really be going back home and not too far from where I live in right on the border of Maywood and Merrill's Park. So, really excited about that. A lot of learning opportunities. I'm happy to support Terrence Swims and what he has going on over there, and looking to improve and give back. So, looking forward to that, and more to come. But and that's also a unique opportunity for me too, because typically, you can't serve on two kind of governing bodies like that. But since Walter is it's not, essentially not a governing body because it's a private institution, it was a unique opportunity for me to kind of serve in that capacity. So I'm excited about it.
Absolutely excited for you, and congratulations, man. It just goes to the great work that you're doing. Not only in the village of Maywood, but provides the township as a whole. And it's just a testament to your hard work, and we know you for a little while now. You're a genuine young man, a leader in the community, and many people look up to you, and so this is in part of your reward. So again, congratulations to you, and continued success in your new role. We'll continue to move forward.
Well, I appreciate that. Looking forward to our discussion.
Absolutely. So let's start off. This is a day of remembrance. Fred Hampton, a great pillar from the village of Maywood, a Proviso East graduate. I think he went to Irvin Elementary School. On this day in 1969, his life was taken away, him as well as the Defense Secretary, Mark Clark, I believe that's his name. Talk about that. Talk about the significance of Fred Hampton and what he meant to the community, what he means to the community to this day.
Yeah, so it's kind of hard to put into words what Chairman meant to just the movement back then, and really that it took a national attack to assassinate a young brother that was only 21 years old and had made so much strides and galvanizing the community and pushing that self-determination spirit amongst the community, and in a lot of ways it still lives in Maywood, and we still honor him. And we've done things like make his childhood home a national landmark, and looking to eventually get that pool that bears his name reopened. But I think big picture, it's really about the attitude of no one's going to save us, and we have to look out for each other, and and also just being aware and not naive that there are intentional oppositions against us, and there's also people in our community that aren't necessarily looking to improve our community, but also looking to infiltrate and cause damage as well. So I think it's about having that awareness, but also understanding that even as a young person, you can make a difference. Yes, so for me, that's what that means, and it's still an honor to have his son, Chairman Fred Hampton Jr., still in the community, still making the difference, and fighting for his father's legacy. So December 4th, means a lot to me, in general, outside of the assassination of Chairman Fred. I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that December 4th is also the founding of the first historically Black fraternity, Alpha Phi Alpha, which I am a member of, and also has a presence in Maywood. When I think about the first Black mayor of Maywood, Joe Freelon,
yes, sir,
being a member of Alpha Phi Alpha, the first Black Speaker of the House, Emmanuel Chris Welch being an Alpha, and not to put myself in those in that category, but scholarship, manly deeds, love for all mankind. Those are things that we represent. And even the home team, Rosetta Lambda chapter here in Maywood, and some of the impacts that we've done with our Alpha Quest program and our programs about a voteless people as a hopeless people, amongst other things. So I just want to definitely make sure I acknowledge with pride and say Happy Founders Day to all the brothers of Alpha Phi Alpha, but then also make sure that I acknowledge the unfortunate tragedy that happened on the west side of Chicago with Chairman Fred and Defense Secretary Mark Clark. So it's great to be able to on this day to be able to acknowledge both of those kind of entities and give a proper salute.
Absolutely. And with all due respect, Trustee Jones, you've been quite humble when you talk about yourself, and I can understand that. But you're leaving a legacy as a trustee, a politician, a community member, somebody from a community, an alpha man, and the work that you're doing. So your work speaks for you. So you don't need to toot your own horn. Many of us who watch you do it without complaining and challenging against the status quo, and keeping an open mind for that those out there, not everybody is for Maywood. There are some seeds that are planted, as we know, that would like to destroy Maywood, keep Maywood divided and not progress. So, we commend you for the work that you're doing. And it just kind of reminds me, going back to Fred Hampton, his brother, Bill Hampton, I believe his name was. He was a board member for the Maywood Park District, I believe. And he was also an outstanding member. And so, with that said, I do hope that the Fred Hampton Aquatic Center, it was called Fred Hampton Pool back in the day, will revitalize or whatever it takes for the name to continue in operations. And I fully trust that you and your fellow board members in the village will make that happen by whatever means necessary. So, there are others outside of Fred Hampton. I'm sorry, are you going to say something, Trustee Jones?
Oh, no, go ahead.
Okay. That was a pivotal moment in the civil rights era. The loss of Chairman Hampton, the loss of Medgar Evers, Malcolm X, Dr. King, even John F. Kennedy and Robert Kennedy. A lot of people lost their lives for the rights for Mr. Freelon to become mayor of Maywood. And for others following him who's standing on his shoulders, whether it's the mayor position or elected trustees such as yourself, who's keeping that good name going, notwithstanding Isaiah Brandon, Mayor Booker, so forth and so on. But we all stand on the shoulders of somebody in the past that makes Maywood great and moving forward. So with that said, I want to transition into Maywood. There are a couple of things that I would like to bring to your attention. We discussed before the podcast. And just so you know, you're watching Let's Talk Maywood on Diversity Today Media. I am the host, Dr. Reggie Ratliff, and joining me is honorary trustee Miguel Jones for the Village of Maywood Board. Trustee Jones, I'd like to just talk a little bit about the property taxes. Can you just talk a little bit about the current state of property taxes for the Village of Maywood?
Yes, so not just Maywood, but Cook County in general. Almost everyone has received their tax bill now. I believe it's due on the 15th. A lot of people in Maywood, their property tax bill increased. And if they looked at it, it's primarily due to the values of our property, the equalized assessed value increasing. And so, in the Village of Maywood, we haven't increased the tax levy in quite some time. I would say at least over the past, 3 or 4 years. But it also kind of, shows and demonstrates to the community that that's not the only moving part as far as what impacts your tax bill. In Maywood, about 50% of our property, the property tax balance that a property owner will pay is going to the village. Mm-hmm. And so, that increase because the values of our homes are increasing. And so what that means for, to me is, and typically in the suburbs, people expect to pay more than, what you'll see in the city. But it also means that people are expecting to see a better return on investment. And also with, our economy, with inflation and the cost of living going up, it's becoming more and more, difficult to, pay these things. We have a high senior population. And so, we are cognizant that, we don't want to price people out of their homes. And so, my job is, especially with a accounting and finance background, is making sure that we are being physically responsible and, that people can see their return on investment. And one of the things that was a, topic, recently was, something as simple as, plowing the snow. We got hit with about a good 6 to 8 inches in a 36-hour span.
Wow.
This week. And, people were frustrated that, they, didn't think that we attacked or we had a strategy, to attack that the best way possible. And so, those are things that, when people see their property tax bill increasing, the expectation, gets higher. And so, we've done a lot of great things, in the village, whether it be, we've had new businesses and, we've had, some improvements as far as our roads and stuff. And we've even had a successful Maywood Fest. But even if you bring Tyrese and the Isley brothers, people still want their main municipal services done at a high standard. So that's what was brought to my attention. And, what I'm going to be, really pushing the board to do is, make sure that we are, executing at a high level and being physically responsible. And so, that's something that's really important. But then also, making sure that people are getting those proper deductions as well. So if you're a homeowner, make sure that you're claiming that homeowner exemption. If you're a senior, make sure you're getting your senior exemption. And and if you want to, if you're looking at your property, your equalized assessed value, and you don't think, it matches what your neighbors are also seeing, then you have a right to appeal that. So I want to encourage everyone to look into that and proceed accordingly.
I'm glad you said that. Is there a website or something that seniors can look up? Is it the county clerk's office or something that they have to go through?
Yeah, so I know the township has the Cook County's assessor's office and the township have resources for you to appeal. I would also, encourage, folks to, reach out to, legal representation. And in a lot of ways, or in a lot of cases, if you hire someone, you can do it on your own. You can do it for free. But, if you do hire someone, in most cases, you don't need to pay them unless you get some sort of refund. So there are quite a few options. I would encourage, our residents to, look into that. Also, I think the Cook County Board of Appeals, I might be saying that wrong, but there are some entities where you can appeal those things and make sure that you're claiming those deductions. Yeah. So, I want to encourage folks to, look into those things and make sure that they're and review their bill and make sure that they are, getting all those deductions so they're not overpaying.
Great point. I'm glad you mentioned that. That's very important, especially for the senior population. What about the abandoned homes? That kind of, negates the opportunity to collect property taxes. So what movement has been implemented to address that issue?
Yeah. So in terms of homes that are abandoned, so, we've seen, quite a few homes get redeveloped over the past, few years, but we do have some vacancies. And so it really just depends on, it's kind of a case by case basis in terms of vacancies. We're either looking to, work with the land bank to, to get those properties back on the tax roll, or we're looking to, looking for investment opportunities. But, big picture, we send out, and particularly in Maywood, this is a huge opportunity that I've brought up before, is that, although we send out, and when I say we, Cook County sends out tax bills, that doesn't mean that we always collect. And so we need to improve on our collection efforts. And again, a lot of that has to do with making sure that, individuals are only paying what they need to pay for. So they're, staying off the tax sale and those type of things. So, I would say, our big our biggest objective is, ensuring that for, vacant homes that, it's somewhat of a case by case basis, but the more that not only just vacant homes, but from a bigger perspective, vacant lots, commercial lots are,
Right.
I think what the tax base of Maywood is missing, and hopefully we could talk about it more. But there's been this big push to TIF almost the entire village, and there are impacts to those type of things, to our to our tax bills, et cetera. So it's something that's ongoing that we're going to be looking to continue to work on. But overall, I would say the priority should really be because like let's say you get anywhere between $7,000 to $9,000 for a single family residential home, but you might get $30,000-$40,000 from a commercial property. And so Maywood has quite a few commercial properties. I think about areas like First and Lake, for instance, or Roosevelt Road or Fifth Avenue. That's where we really want to see a push for development, because that also brings in the region, right? So not only just property taxes, but then sales taxes, because single family homes, you might get property taxes, but you're not getting sales taxes on those. So and you're also not employing individuals for those. So I think in terms of this Maywood and being able to afford our our budgetary needs and to make sure that our schools are running well and our park districts, et cetera. I think the attention should be definitely, pushed towards, some of those areas so we can, make a better impact for our residents and visitors.
Yeah. I want to put a pin on that part because as far as the park district, I know Mr. Horn, Jeremy Horn, hey out there, Mr. Horn, he asked about the situation with the Maywood Park District. So what's the status? I know I had Mayor Booker on before the election. He said that referendum expired. I didn't push it. I just had my thought. I mean, I knew it didn't expire, but the fact that it's still open, what is the next step? I mean, there was another referendum talking about management style government, for the village as far as the mayor position and others. But specifically the Maywood Park District, what is the current status of that?
Yeah, so the Maywood Park District is active, and I would actually encourage you to maybe get one of their park commissioners on to be able to explain what's the ongoing future plans for the park district and the things that they want to do. But I would say big picture, there's been some rumors going around that there's petitions to dissolve the park district, and the village has been hiring individuals that essentially have roles in the park and recreation space. And so I would say big picture, the residents of Maywood are contributing to have park and rec resources. However, it's kind of all over the place. The municipality is doing park and rec services. The park district is doing park and rec services. Back around 2020, we had an agreement where over a 2 or 3 year span, we were going to transition the parks that the municipality owned and transition it to the park district. That didn't happen for a couple reasons that I won't necessarily go into the details, but I think what I would like to see is both the Village of Maywood and the park district have a discussion about what is going to be the approach going forward for park and rec, services in the village. I think that's what we need to do, because I think with the Village of Maywood, based on our current investment, not only in Connor Heights Park and the Glen Dock Rivers basketball court and some of the improvements that we've seen at the park and these hiring decisions, that we agree that there's more investment that needs to be made. I think the issue is that, and if you look at your tax bill, there's so much money that gets divvied up between the library and the village and the municipality and and those type of things. I think we need to be thinking about, is that a adequate allocation? The village gets about 50%, and maybe the park district, I'm going off the top of my head, maybe they get 2 or 3%. Should that be more like 47% goes to the municipality, and then the Maywood Park District gets 6 or 7%, so they can have a a larger base to hire people and buy equipment and provide programming and services.
Yeah.
But I think there's not a out of the box solution for that. I think we need to sit down and get community input and decide what's the best approach. There's communities that do it differently. I think about Bellwood and even Merrill's Park, and there's certain communities that collaborate with other villages to provide those type of services. But I don't know what the solution is, but I do think that we need to not be siloed in these type of discussions, but come together like we did in 2020, and let's have some sort of approach that we can agree to. Because again, property tax bills are increasing, and so people are going to get more and more frustrated if services aren't adequate. And so I think at the end of the day, people want a return on their investment, and they want it to be clear, right? And they want professionals running these services. And so I think that's where we need to have a above board, not behind the scenes, but we need to have an above board discussion, really talk about our finances and then come up with a solution. So that's, my take on it.
I want to ask you on that point. Now, I heard you say that people have spoken. The people also spoke in 2007. I was living in Maywood at the time. They wanted the referendum. They wanted the parks to go to the park district. That hasn't happened for whatever reason. Both the village and the park district are in serious debt. Property taxes are going up. You talk about vacant commercial lots. That's hindering even more funding or revenue generated in the village. Why not just turn over the parks to the Maywood Park District, so the village of Maywood is no longer cast with that burden of caring for the parks, and then afterwards work with the park district and have a moderator work with both sides to come up with a plan? Because right now the plan ain't working.
Right.
So I just want to just throw it out there and get your thoughts about the parks just going to the park district and reducing that debt.
Yeah, so I think, just to be completely honest, I believe that there have been struggles on both ends in terms of why that we just didn't, no questions asked, just transfer the parks over. Back when we kind of revisited the kind of follow-up of that 2006 referendum back in 2020, the park district did not accept the parks, just kind of based on our agreement, because they said that they needed money, to also, fund the park. So it's one thing just to do something, but you want it to be successful. You want it to be set up for success. So anytime you take on more property, that's going to come with more operational costs. Right. And so if there's not a corresponding levy that increases, you're not going to be able to operate on the same budget, but have more land and property to, grass to cut and, services to provide. And so I think that has probably been the issue. Also, both entities are just starting to really work on getting some of these audits completed. And again, I don't want to necessarily speak for the park district, but I believe they were in a status where they weren't able to receive state funding because of audits being outstanding. So let's say we just said, okay, well, that doesn't matter, and so we're just going to transfer the parks.
Right.
If you're not able to, receive state funding, then again, it's about the return on investment from the residents. Right. So I think the residents are requesting for us to do something, but you got to have common sense too, right? It's not about just proving a point, but it's also about making sure that it's successful. And so there has been good reasons why that hasn't been completed, but that doesn't mean that's not the sentiment of the community. I think that's what you're ultimately getting at, is the sentiment of the community is that they want a park district that's going to provide the services that are needed. And all they know is, hey, we're paying taxes. Why is it not getting done? And I think we need to essentially work on getting it done. But that's where transparency has to come in, right? Like we need to know what the problems are and then what's the approach to getting that done. So I know, the park district is working on those things. I attended a meeting not too long ago, where I know they are addressing those things and catching up on past bills and
right.
A lot of cleanup stuff, right? You have new elected officials, new park district commissioners that are getting their bearings and trying to catch up on things that are priorities. But at the same time, you got to be able to walk and chew bubblegum. So while we're doing those things, we need to also be still supporting this transition plan or whatever the plan is. So
right.
I think you got to be able to walk and chew bubblegum. You have to say, okay, so the sentiment of the community is that we want an established park and rec governing body, but we also want it to be successful, right? Because people don't want it to do it just to do it. I want to be able to go there and so my kid can do Little League baseball or
right. Bring it back, please.
Yes, or whatever the case is, right? It's not just to do it just to say we did it and there's no services,
right.
or buildings are shutting down or they're not in good condition and all those type of things.
Right.
So I think it's about knowing that we've been tasked with the job and actually addressing it and having some of those tough conversations, right? And then coming up with a timeline, just like project management, right? You have a project and then you forecast, okay, how long is this going to take? And then you benchmark it, right? So we might say, okay, this is going to take us 18 months to figure this out. And then you break it up in 3-month periods. And then you say, okay, at this mark, we should be here. And at this mark, we should be here. So we can eventually land, to the ultimate goal. And I think that's, what we haven't done successfully. And that's where I would ask, not only the village of Maywood, but the park district to come together and have those discussions on behalf of the residents.
As you know, Trustee Jones, that's something I've been advocating since our first conversation, a strategic plan. Even if it's not a collaborative effort, the strategic plan for the village, I know it's separate from the strategic plan for the park district, but you're just hitting the nail on the head with that, in my opinion. There's no plan, no solid plan to talk about the short-term goals and the long-term goals. And you're describing a Gantt chart when you have things done, a timeline, whether short, mid, or long-term goals within a year or 1 to 5 years and 5 years beyond. Just imagine, just for a moment, when did you take office? When did you take office?
2019.
Okay, so that was 6 years ago. Imagine 6 years ago, say January of 2020. You guys say, okay, we're going to put together a financial plan. All right, it doesn't have to be a strategic plan, a financial review. Let's see where we are. Okay. Think about how far the village could have gotten as it relates to the internal affairs, as well as the external stakeholders, the constituents, and the village, the park district. Can you just imagine, just using the methods you're talking about, how much further along both entities would be? At least may not have been a solution, but there would have been some benchmarks, like you said, some key performance indicators. Right. So, I mean, for me, that's just kind of the frustrating part.
Yeah, I think, politics kind of got involved. So with parks and recs normally comes youth, a lot of like the fun part of the municipality, right? So it's like, that's the social engagement part. And so a lot of people want their hands on that. So that's where the politics murkies just what the sentiment of the community was. I also think from my observation back then when we, in 2020, when I do think in good faith, we were looking to transition the parks, I don't think the leaders at that time were honest about where they were, right? And what they really needed in order to get this done. Because again, I think, sometimes that doesn't sound good, from to say, hey, we need this and we need that.
Right.
And sometimes it's a larger undertaking than what some people's acumen, can handle. And I say that respectfully, but, I think from what I see, I think the best approach, as I said, would be to, and the village of Maywood has already kind of acknowledged through some of the hirings that we've made that there is a need for investment in the park and rec space.
Yeah.
So I think, if we just think about what we're contributing now from the municipality and from the park district combined, I think we have enough to run a sustainable park and rec space in the village. But what's happening now is that it's, kind of fragmented and it's kind of all over the place. And I think a lot of that has to do with, with politics, or in some cases there might be, well, they don't have their finances in order, so let's dissolve them, and then the village will do it. And then the community says, no, we don't want the village to do it because you're not the experts, right? Like, you guys didn't run on that. Most people that ran for village trustee did not run on park and rec, services, because that wouldn't make sense, because that's not the role you're running for. So for that now to be a priority doesn't quite make sense either, right? And so I think that's where we have to kind of take the politics out. Like you said, get a moderator, think about what and then also see what other communities are doing.
Best practices.
Talk about best practices, and then have above board conversations. There's a lot of things that happen behind the scenes that I think also don't allow for the voice of the people, and for people that actually kind of know how to maneuver in these spaces to kind of move forward. So, and there's also non-government entities that are doing a great job, with offering things. I think about, Athletic Connection, and I think about Danka, and, some of these other entities that do a great job offering programming to our, to our residents. Even our neighbors, River Forest, offer youth to join their program for free, their soccer program. So there are things that are happening, but it's fragmented. And I think it's because there just needs to be there needs to be folks that are adults in the room that say, we know this isn't going to be quick and a snap of the finger, but we have to come together and have these discussions above board, and really be honest about, again, project managing what we could do to successfully get to a place where we can make that transition. So I believe this could happen in 12 to 18 months. Okay. But it would first have to start with a conversation about, again, getting our audits in order, right? Yeah. I know the park district's behind. The village, we're catching up. We got an extension on ours, but it's still behind. So we all need to catch up and get our houses in order. But we also have to be able to walk and chew bubblegum, as I mentioned. So those conversations still need to happen. So whether it be Mayor Booker and Park District President Johnson, maybe I'll make this formal request. You all need to reach out to each other and say, hey, we need to bring our boards together to figure this out. Like, stop with the individual plans or not really speaking up. Let's figure this out. Right. And let's get our executive directors and our village managers together and say, hey, we have been tasked with something, and our jobs are to figure it out. And we're going to come up with a timetable. And that's just it. And holding their feet to the fire on that. I think that's how you move forward. Absolutely.
I mean, that's why they were elected. Bottom line, you're elected to carry out these tasks. What is the goal? What is the objective? And how are you going to please the people? It's not pleasing yourself, because that's where I've seen when I was in Maywood up until 2016, when I moved back to Virginia. I mean, it was a lot of fragmented relationships. And true enough, there's some internal disagreements that happened under the Freeline administration. They didn't always get along, but they thought about the community first. And, and it worked. We had the Little League baseball teams, minor league baseball teams, Pony League baseball teams. Fairhampton Pool was working and flowing. It was always packed for those who grew up in Maywood in the 70s. And even during your time growing up, Trustee Jones, you knew about everything that was happening in Maywood. Absolutely. But now here we are, and I don't want to use the word embarrassing because that's too strong of a word. It's not like nothing is happening, so there's work happening, the meetings and behind the scenes. But like you said, President Johnson, Mayor Booker, you have to get together. I don't know if it's egos or whatever, but we have to put that aside and really focus on the people and those who came before this generation. We're talking like 2 generations of children that have passed through Maywood, did not take advantage of the services because they were practically non-existent or there was political infighting, and they wound up going to other communities. And it wasn't like a collaboration like you're doing, like Tour de Maywood, Tour de Proviso?
Tour de Proviso.
Yeah. But those are authentic relationships that you were built. That wasn't happening back then. It was, we went to other communities because they didn't exist. Those programs did not exist in Maywood in the early 2000s up until today. So I get it. I get it. So again, hopefully and prayerfully, there's a meeting of the minds that's for the people. Have good people like yourself representing the village board, and people like President Johnson and others who want the best for the community. Do you agree?
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And those folks that chair those entities, I'm just personally requesting that they, not that they need to have a meeting that's on the phone or whatever. I'm talking about, no, you guys need to establish a plan where it's above board, where it's transparent, where everyone can see the discussion, and where we can come up with a game plan where we all agree on. That's hard to do, but that's what you all assigned. That's what you all signed up for. Right. So, task your individual boards with saying, hey, we need to come up with a plan, because that's what the residents said they wanted for us, a plan to essentially have a thriving park district. So unless we come out of those meetings, let's say we have 2 or 3 meetings and we say this is absolutely not viable, which I can't see that happening, right? But let's just say that happens, and then we come up with a plan B. But the first step is for them to say, all right, Maywood Park District Board, Village of Maywood Board, we have been tasked to do something. It's not about trying to get citizens to sign petitions to dissolve the park district, and it's not about the park district just ignoring what's going on and just kind of going with the motions and only trying to work on past issues. You got to do both. So that's what needs to happen, and it needs to happen ASAP. So I think that needs to happen in Q1 of 2026. Let people enjoy their New Year's and their Christmas, but that's what needs to happen. If that doesn't happen, we need to be asking why. And who cares what the issue is? I've heard, the park district is on the, they can't get state funding list, so it's just not worth talking about. That's nonsense. Mm-hmm. Or the village isn't the expert, so they shouldn't be leading the discussion. Whatever the case may be, that's what needs to happen, because we obviously haven't figured it out any other way, and we've done a lot of flip-flopping and what we want to do. So let's go back to, like you said, the sentiment of the residents is that they want a thriving park and rec space. Both entities are contributing to those efforts, and grassroots organizations, but it is fragmented. So what can we do to consolidate those efforts? That takes talent. Right. That takes true talent. That takes knowing numbers. That takes knowing how to get over hurdles. It's not about dismissing, certain ideas. And it's about having it transparently, right, at where it's recorded and people can review it and people can hear what your responses are. And then also, we are policymakers, et cetera. This is also where you hire village managers and executive directors that are supposed to be experts in these spaces. They both have master's degrees in public administration or, experience. So we need to lean on them. You have attorneys. So we can figure it out. Do we have the political will, to do that? And really, I think anything else outside of that is unacceptable. So that's coming from me. That's what I would like to see. If those gentlemen have a better plan, I'd love to hear it. But otherwise, that's what I'm expecting to happen as an approach going forward.
Well, it'd be good, Trustee Jones, if you can also make mention of that during the board meeting, so that if they aren't watching this podcast, that they'll hear from you during the board meeting, because time is far surpassed for them to have a meeting of the mind. It's time to move forward and stop talking and start doing. And I just want to know, Jeremy Horn said he completely agreed. Terry, can you show that comment by who's that? Darian J. It was a comment. So he says here, can you see that, Trustee Jones? The comment?
I do.
Okay. So he agrees with you. Mr. Horn agrees with you. And the mass agrees with you.
Yeah. That's the sentiment of the community. So I think we have to address why that's not happening, and we need to address that publicly, is what I'm saying. So,
thank you,
why, and again, these are, there's new people in serving in some of these capacities, of being village trustee or, park commissioner, some of these roles. Yeah. So, there should be some new ideas. There should be some new enthusiasm to get some of this stuff done. I'm all for it. And Dr. Ratliff, I've said this to the Park District Board, and I've said this to the Village Board, but it's all about the majority. So I'm one person on a 7-member board, and I believe, I think there's 5 members on the Park District Board. So it's about a majority. You need at least 3 people to agree over there, and you need at least 4 people to agree, on the Village Board side. So you got 1, right? So now it's about, we need at least 3 more, but I don't know why that's not unanimous. And I think, we have to stop asking and we have to start demanding, but that takes citizen engagement. That's, and saying, here's what we expect. And that's also tasking, again, not just elected officials, but the staff, right? And, and it's also, because, and that's where, as a village, I haven't agreed with some of these hirings where we're hiring park and rec. That doesn't make sense. We're municipal services. Like, why are we investing in that and, not in making that what we should be doing to make sure that these roads are clear when snow comes, or, that these curbs are in good shape, or our sidewalks, or, like those type of things. That's what we should be focusing on. So I think we've lost our way, but part of that has to do with politics, and it has to do with, again, the park and rec space in general, again, has a lot to do with the social engagement part of it. So people want to take ownership of that because you get to, in a lot of ways, engage with the community in a way that you might not do it when you're talking about your water bill, or you're talking about, garbage pickup, or TIF districts, or, like those things are, or where you might not get the parents out necessarily. So that's, I think that's kind of people are jockeying for position in that regard. And also because you do get grants and those type of things. So I think that's where we need to just kind of, again, stop with the nonsense. And a lot of that stuff doesn't happen if it's happening above board, right? Because you have to say this stuff in public, and if the community's engaged, and, demanding answers, and will call you out if these things aren't being done. So
as they should, as they should.
Yeah. So that's my wish and plan going forward. But I can guarantee you that Commissioner Johnson and Mayor Booker both know my sentiments. This is not a secret to them.
Right. Well, I'm glad to hear that, and I hope that they, take heed to what your advice is and the input, and that others would join and resolve this longstanding issue. But it transitioned here. You're just talking about snow removal. As you know, there were a lot of complaints about the snow removal. Now, I'm fortunate, Trustee Jones. I'm here in Northern Virginia, and they're gonna close the school in most counties because we're expecting like 2 inches of snow, which is it's a different. When we have more hills and things like that. I was gonna book a flight home because we're celebrating our 40th year anniversary of winning the state wrestling championship, but there's gonna be delays, and I don't even know if I'll make it there to Chicago tomorrow. So I'm just praying that there's a break in weather. But nonetheless, we don't have the problems with snow removal that is taking place in Maywood. Is it a problem with snow removal, or is it just something that people were just kind of stir up trouble? Because I know there is a policy with snow removal and where it pushes out and things like that.
I don't think there's a problem. I think in this particular case, and I've kind of heard some things behind the scenes. I think so our village manager has been on leave for a while for reasons I can't say publicly right now, but he's been on leave. And so I think there's been some disconnect between the execution part of it, that day-to-day part. And, and I think that became, very obvious, to the residents, because everyone knew that there was a big snowstorm coming. And, based on certain things that we've been seeing, I think people just have a high expectation. And the other thing is people aren't blind. They see what's happening in our neighboring communities. So it's like, why is it when I go past First Avenue heading east, they figured it out, and when I go, west, heading toward Bellwood, or I'm heading north toward Merrill's Park, or, Broadview, like they figured it out, but Maywood isn't. So it becomes one of those things like, so what are we missing? And so I think it was a matter of not either being prepared, or the strategy was not clear, or in some cases, I hear that there was some employee dissatisfaction. And so, some people just didn't even show up. But so I think people see that, and it annoys them, right? Because it's like, why, if I'm paying $8,000 or $9,000 in taxes, why can't you all figure that out? And whether it be in overtime or whatever, it's like, but that's why you have people there that are paid to figure that out. So it was just one of those things where people had an expectation. In Chicago, it's also, it snows and then it gets cold and it starts to freeze. So then that snow, if you don't address it right away or as it's ongoing, it freezes, and now you're dealing with ice, and then that becomes an even more dangerous situation. Or you have where plows are shoveling snow in people's driveways, or you got leaves from the fall that weren't properly disposed of. Like, those are things that are really kind of rookie mistakes, or just not doing things the right way. And so that has a lot to do on how we're executing and getting things done. So that's something that hopefully we take back that feedback. But let's not underestimate our residents, right? They're not sometimes I think people think that we're super easy to please for whatever reason, but like, no, people have a very high expectation. Absolutely. Right. So and I'm glad that residents were voicing their opinion, but really we that's the village manager's job. So I know we have elected officials that like to get ahead of that stuff, and we should, but that's staff stuff, right? I'm not out there plowing any snow, right? That's public works and those type of, and those guys work hard, like, not to throw them under the bus. It's just about, at the end of the day, it's about just a grading scale. And people see that based on their region. It's like, well, how can that town get it right? And how can that town get it right? And we're not getting it right. That is embarrassing. That is embarrassing. It is. That's because, again, snow is not new to Chicago. So I think it's just about, again, when people see all this hiring and, they see all these kind of grandiose gestures and stuff, they're thinking, okay, yeah, we're on top of it, and then they get really disappointed when they look outside and it's like, what's going on? Like, it just, people don't even care what the excuse is. It's like, why is it not getting done right? They don't care about the backstory. So it's just about increasing the standard, and the standard isn't just about getting it done eventually. Like, people want you to feel confident that you thought about this and that there is a strategy before the day of, right? And that there's a plan B, and that, all those type of things. So, no excuses. It's just about improving the standard, and residents, stay on top of it. Ask questions, right? And say, okay, so who's running this? Right? And we have a council manager form of government. So it's no elected official that's running the day-to-day. And we shouldn't be given that impression. So we need to go to who are the directors of these departments, and who's the person up top, and why is this not getting done? Because all of them guys are they're paid to do that, right? And so our job is to oversee that in a lot of ways through the village manager, but ultimately, based on our form of government and what the community voted on back in April about retaining the council manager form of government, that means they want professionals running the day-to-day. So we need to ensure that professionals are overseeing and operating the day-to-day. Absolutely.
Now, does the village have an interim village manager right now, or is it just it's just spread out?
Yes. So our director of finance, Miss Satchel, is filling in right now for our village manager, Frank Torres, while he's on leave. And so, she's holding down the fort, and, she's doing a good job. But, we also have
two major jobs, Trustee. That's a big responsibility. That's a
huge responsibility. That's a huge responsibility. And it kind of goes back to, again, how we're going about these things, and do they make sense? So this is just a Band-Aid on a bigger problem. And, quite frankly, we don't talk about the village manager role a lot in our community, even though that's the form of government that we have, where we hire a nonpartisan professional to run the day-to-day. It's, often talked about elected officials, which we do have a role, but in terms of who's executing on the decisions that the board makes, that has more impact than anything. So again, this isn't to throw anybody under the bus, because again, those guys on, you know, the men and women at Village Hall, they work hard and they execute you know, as well as they can, but or, you know, they do their job, but we need to do a better job, because that's what the community said that they wanted, and that's their expectation. So, you know, we've got some things to figure out and discuss, but, you know, I hope the community is paying attention and asking the right questions.
I'm just curious how, and it's not on you. I just want to know from a economic standpoint, an operational standpoint, what sense does it make to have this is a chief finance officer? You said that this young lady you're talking about, who's also the interim manager. What's her main position? Director of Finance. So how is it possible for her to be the director of finance and the interim village manager? Those are two separate major. That's like two executives of a business. It's impossible to perform at a high level in both roles.
Absolutely. I mean, well, one, I think I think what you're exposing is the fact that, you know, both are full-time jobs, right? So something's falling through the gaps, right? Or there's somebody doing somebody else's job.
Right.
Like and that's the point. It's not clear what's going on, right? It's like, okay, so you have, you know, our director of finance, and she's kind of filling in the gaps, right? Which is really, you know, when things like that happens, that pretty much means you're still doing your job. You're just kind of making sure that there's no fires that are happening at that level. But
Trustee Jones,
yes.
She's not doing her job, because she's spending time as director and spending time as an interim village manager. So even if it was 2020, first of all, she's not working 40 hours for her job, her main job, right? She's not working 40 hours a week as a director of finance. It's no way possible. And then the village manager, isn't the village manager like 24/7 on call if there's a situation or whatever? It's not just a 9 to 5. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean the village manager is always on call. I mean, it's a salaried position. It's, you know, at the end of the day, it's based on a 40-hour work week, but it's one of those things where it's just like a doctor or a nurse.
Yeah,
I mean, they're not at work 24 hours a day, but you might get called in, or there's emergencies that happen. But I guess what I'm saying is so, like, let's say if you have a you know, like, let's say you run a department and you have 3 employees, right? And one quits. You're still going to be like, you still need to get all those tasks done, but now people are overloaded, right? And what's going to happen is that you're prioritizing, so something's going to fall through the cracks, right? And that usually, or, you know, there can be people that are doing things that don't have a whole lot of experience in doing that. But I think, to your point, is that's just unacceptable with our type of level of organization, right? Like, and so that's where, you know, I think the board has to answer those questions, and we need to come up with a solution. But this isn't the first time we've been in this situation. When we let go of our not our most recent village manager, but her last name was Wells Armstrong. When
from Kankakee.
Yes, from Kankakee. When she was you know, eventually terminated, the board voted, which was, you know, kind of led by the mayor and some of his, you know, people that supported him on the board, that Chief Willis was the interim village manager.
I remember that.
Remember? Like, so think about that. To me, that's even more like, to me, that even makes less sense, because at least the director of finance
it's a cousin. It could do some of that.
It's on the heel, right? And a lot of that role has to do with, like, you know, risk management and employees and budgeting and, you know, kind of making day-to-day decisions. But the police chief, you know, he's in a completely different building, right? You know, he's on Fifth Avenue. So somehow the chief was expected to not only, you know, lead our law enforcement, but also be managing the day-to-day operations of the town. And so, you know, you'd be surprised how we land on certain decisions. Politics has a lot to do with why we land on some of these decisions. And quite frankly, you know, if just going back to this council manager form of government thing. Yeah. So if you recall, that was a referendum question about where did the community want to land, and that was board led. So there are people on our board that believe that we should have a different form of government. And so what's happening essentially is, like, for all this to make sense, there's some sort of hybrid thing going on, right? Where despite the fact that the residents said that they wanted this form of government, and based on what you just kind of figured out, well, how can you be doing both? That means somebody else is doing somebody other's job, right?
Right.
And I think that's pretty apparent as far as elected officials kind of doing a lot of day-to-day stuff. Right. You know, whether it be curating the newsletter or making hiring decisions.
Right.
Because I doubt that the village manager, even though they might be signing off on it, and I'm not talking about Miss Satchel, but, you know, why would we hire a park and rec coordinator? Like, how does that make sense in the grand scheme of the municipality? Right. So, you know, there's I believe that there's still the strong mayor tones that should not be. Right. Essentially, if I'm being honest, I can't say that I have seen that, like, literally with my own eyes, but that's what, you know, me kind of knowing how organizations are run, and also knowing the sentiment of the board that was being pushed. And you know, there's also this thing which was not true, because there was two questions on the ballot about, you know, whether we wanted to retain our current form of government, which is the council manager form of government, or whether or not we wanted to switch to the strong mayor. What happened is that both questions had more yeses than nos, but since the council manager form of government prevailed because it had more support, that's what prevailed. But there's this narrative going around that the community actually wanted both, or, you know, and that's just not, or that's not what the ending result is. So I believe, this is my opinion, that there's some sort of hybrid situation that's going on, and that's how we're operating, and that's part of the problem, and that's where the confusion comes in, and that's where you know, I think if we can get on the same page with that, which is going to take the board to kind of step in and actually respect what the residents said that they wanted, then I think we could one, hire the people that are actually truly you know, kind of qualified to be in the role, versus what I think has been happening is kind of hiring folks that are essentially going to allow, you know, elected officials just to operate they want to operate, versus having, like, the appropriate kind of structure and, you know, separation of responsibilities as policymakers and then day-to-day folks. So I think certain people have been put in place almost as a decoy. Right. Like, hey, you're the village manager, and, you know, you go, you run stuff, but really there's somebody behind the scenes making, you know, a lot of the decisions. And I think we're just not getting we're not getting the best return on our investment. And that's the problem. And that's really disrespectful to what the residents said that they wanted. So, you know, hopefully, again, that we can kind of operate at the right level so we can get the best out of our government.
Yeah, the referendum about the strong mayor form of government as opposed to council form of government, that was in 2024. Is it 2025?
No, that was this year. That was in April of 2025.
Okay. So the people spoke in 2006, and the people spoke in 2025. So people keep speaking, but nobody's listening. That's a problem.
Yeah, well, you know, as what I've come to find out, and we'll see this even at the federal level, that democracy is not self-executing. Although we might think it is, like, just because you vote on something, or, you know, say, hey, that's what we want, it doesn't self-execute. You have to actually still be hands-on to do it. It's like if you hired a contractor and you gave them a template to, hey, or a blueprint to build your house. You just can't walk away and then show up 5 months later and be like, all right, you know, and just expect everything went well. You need to be managing that, like project manager. You need to be making sure that, oh, wait, hold on, this is what the blueprint says. Why are you freestyling, right? Or sometimes things do happen, right? Where, you know, you have to, you know, you have to problem solve right away. So just because, you know, again, democracy is not self-executing. It's a participatory sport.
Yeah.
meaning that you have to participate, and it's about accountability and it's about checks and balances.
Absolutely.
Right. So, so when we do execute on that, and one of the things that I, started was this task force, this council manager form of government task force, which is really residents that can help lead what that looks like, right? To enforce what the community said that they wanted. It's like putting up a speed limit sign that says, you can only go 25 miles an hour on this street. You think that's just self-executing, or do you have to enforce that? You know what I mean? Like, it'd be naive to think, oh, there's a sign there. No one's going to go above 25 miles an hour just because you put a sign. They're like, no, you have to enforce that. Like, you have to, you got to right. You have to give out tickets. You have to enforce that so people know that is real. So I think that's where the residents have to come in, and that's where citizens have to take ownership and saying, hold on, this is what we said we wanted, and this is what we expect. And if that isn't happening, that's where you need to go to people that can enforce those things. And so there's agencies and there's different offices, whether it be at the county, state, or federal level, that are more than happy to, if you reach out to them and show them evidence that things aren't going the way they should, or people are doing shady stuff, especially with public resources, they will come in and say, okay, you need to be providing proof that these things are getting done, or you're gonna have to answer to us. So hopefully that doesn't come to that, because again, that's not good. I mean, that's not encouraging either. But again, it's not self-executing. Just because you put that sign up and it says 25 miles an hour, what are you going to do when somebody goes 35 over? What are you going to do when somebody goes 40? What are you going to do when somebody drives 45 other than say, hey, slow down?
They're going to say whatever,
Right. And it happens, right? People figure out the speed limit once they get past First Avenue. Or if you're driving down Manheim, people figure it out. Or if you're out south and you're going,
there's that one section of Manheim, like right by the graveyard, you can't go too fast. And once you pass that joker,
or if you're over there in like Bridgeview or Beverly on the south side, people know who to pull it with. And I think Maywood needs to create the culture that we can't be the community that you pull it with, right? People know how to throw trash in the trash can when they're just the next town over. But for whatever reason, when they get to our town,
just tossing out the window.
It just, because who cares, right? Because and part of the perception is that we don't care.
Right.
So if they don't care, why would I care? It's kind of like that broken window theory. So once we take our own rules seriously, then people will respect us. But if we are nonchalant or dismissive about what we say we want, and we just kind of do what we want anyway, then I mean, why would I respect your house if you don't respect your house?
Absolutely. No, you're right. I was speaking at the cemetery in Westchester when you go past it, and then it turns to Roosevelt Road, the expressway part. You go 30 or whatever. Terry said we need to wrap the show up, but I got one more thing. I got a couple more things to ask you. You're watching Let's Talk Maywood, Diversity Today Media. We are going to end in a couple minutes. We have the Honorable Village Manager, the Village Trustee in Maywood, Miguel Jones, Trustee Jones. I want to ask you real quick. I asked you about the interim village manager. Is there any plans to hire an interim village manager, or is it just going to stay what it is now until Mr. Torres come back?
That's to be determined. No, so the plan is that role should have a permanent, full-time, qualified employee. That's the goal. Frank Torres was in the role and had to go on leave. So this is just a interim solution until whether he comes back or not is to be determined. But no, the goal is, and what the community said that they want, is that they want a full-time, nonpartisan, professional village manager running the day-to-day. So that's not an opinion whether or not we do that. We were mandated to do that. Now the timetable on that is to be determined, but that is, we don't have any other choice but to ultimately get that done now. And also, that's not fair to Lanye either, that's in that role, to kind of have her doing
Right. That's a lot.
Too fast. So so it's just right now it's just a Band-Aid. And it's really not even fair to, which I'm assuming maybe it's the mayor that's, making decisions, because that's, he doesn't get paid to do that. And that's not what the community said they wanted. So if that's what's happening, again, I'm guessing, then we need to, again, come up with a solution, which we will. But yeah.
Trustee Jones, why don't you know? If this was a decision made for her to take on an interim role?
So that is the case. What's happening right now, like as of today, she's in the role as an interim basis.
You guys voted for that, or was it a unilateral decision?
Yeah, no, it was voted for that. Okay. Yeah, it was voted for that. Yeah, so I guess to play catch up. So our village manager went on leave last month, right? And so was it last month or about 6 weeks ago? And so we had to have someone in that role as a interim, right? After so long, it's like someone on vacation. After about a week or so, it's like, all right, where's this person or whatever. So at that point, you have someone that's in that role to be able to have that decision-making authority. The board has to assign someone to have that decision-making authority. So we've done that, right? So, but we know that's temporary. So what I'm saying, what's to be determined is what is the permanent solution is what I'm saying. So right now, the base is like, there's a check mark on it, but it's circled, right? It's a interim thing while we figure out what the approach is. And the reason why I don't know that now is because that's not my sole decision. It's a board decision to figure out what the what's going to be the permanent solution to that. But yeah, so that's where we are now, and then it'll be to be determined on how we go forward.
Okay, I just have one more item to discuss with you. That's the midterm elections. How does that impact the village of Maywood with the midterm elections coming up? At the federal level, Donald Trump is trying to redistrict, the red states, so it's more favorable for the Republicans next year. And is that impacting our area, the village of Maywood, or even the state of Illinois, with everything going on?
Oh, I mean, absolutely. I think our country in general is impacted by the decisions that are happening, at the federal level. And people are responding to what's happening, and primarily in Texas with them doing that whole redistrict gerrymandering thing. And essentially that's their way of trying to, take out Black and brown representation and gain more seats in the House of Representatives. And, and other states are going to likely be responding. Like I know California did their I think it's called Prop 30, Prop 50. Yeah. And other states are going to be looking to, kind of do those things. And Governor Pritzker has been, looking to things that we could do at the state level to combat, some of those things. But I think ultimately, 2026 is going to be a big year in terms of, try to right this ship, and things that impact us, even though they're federal, is like a government shutdown.
Yeah.
Like that's huge, right? Yeah. Or SNAP benefits, or, seniors being able to, get their, medicine and all those things. So, I think, I'm hoping that people, politics is local, but we also have to be engaged in what's happening at the state and federal level, because it does impact us. And when you have a federal government that doesn't think too highly of what are deemed to be like blue states, that impacts federal resources. People, and so I think what we need to be thinking about is ensuring that we all get fair and equitable representation.
Yeah.
So there aren't petty things like that happening, because people feel the impacts of like not having SNAP, or not having access to being able to go to the doctor. Yeah. Because and then also think about what's happening in Broadview.
Oh my God. Yeah.
There's a federal, there's a ICE facility right there. And that throws a wrench in what a local mayor or a community of less than 10,000 what they're trying to do, and is putting people's lives at risk. And those type of things. And, there was an elected official in Oak Park that got arrested, or, there's, even like, one of our Cook County commissioners getting maced and those type of things. So like, or even our Hispanic population being attacked, or our, Venezuelan or Colombian or Hispanic, people being demonized. And, and we know that when those things happen, that, Black people, we're if we're not at the forefront, we're next.
Right next to it. Yeah.
We're next. So we have to be cognizant of that, or you think about things like, 50-year mortgages.
Crazy.
You'll be paying on, you won't ever see any equity in your lifetime, especially with the home ownership age rising. So if you don't own a home, I bought my place when I was 30. If I had a 50-year mortgage, I wouldn't own it till I was 80. If I'm God willing alive at that time.
Right.
To be able to pass down, because that's where wealth is passed down primarily in this country, is through home ownership.
Yeah.
So those things are important, and that's where I want to encourage people to be paying attention and not be dismissive or fight the urge to feel like there's nothing you could do. Right. Stay engaged and stay active in those conversations, because we need to be strategic, because if you have a job, you pay federal income taxes. You have a say so. And so I just want to encourage people to, stay involved and stay engaged in those things.
Absolutely. And finally, Trustee Jones, I wanted to ask you, because I can't help but bring this up. The Maywood Fest, it seemed like it was a resounding success. Talk about that for like a minute or so. I mean, what was the results of that in your opinion?
Yeah. This year, there was a different approach. We had the Maywood Fest, but then we also invited Summer Jam that was originally scheduled to be in another community. We invited those planners to come to Maywood and host the event in Maywood, and it was successful. In terms of just no safety issues. People got home safely, and all the artists came, and then we had things to do for the youth, a lot of food vendors, etc. So it was successful in that regard. But I would want folks to understand what was the cost to the village, and that's something I'm always thinking about, because at the end of the day, although those type of things are fun and they do bring a lot of enjoyment to our residents, a lot of people don't want their tax dollars going to that. They kind of want that to be established by some sort of private entity, or if their tax dollars are going to that, then they shouldn't be paying for it, right?
Right.
So if my tax dollars are paying for it, why am I buying a ticket?
Right.
To do it. And so I think we'll have to talk about the numbers, but the rough numbers that I've seen, I think we took a net loss of somewhere between $50,000 to $100,000 on that.
Oh wow! So
and I have a problem with that, because those are the type of things you do when you have excess,
right?
When we're still, or when you have the main things figured out at a very high standard. I think it was successful, and I hope that we can continue to bring those type of events to the community. But we need to make sure that whatever the cost is, that we're able to offset that with the appropriate revenue. Otherwise, the residents have to eat the cost.
Yes.
And when people are paying $9,000 and $10,000 a year for taxes, trust me, they would gladly X that out to make sure that snow is removed on time, and that the streets that Fifth Avenue isn't blighted, or that we have a professional village manager, or that our departments are staffed fully.
Village manager.
People would much rather you invest in that, than like some sort of one-time event, even though it was great. And because a lot of those folks that came aren't necessarily Maywoodians either. They get to come and party in our town and then leave, and then we're stuck with the bill. So I just want to make sure that I want to have a good time, and it was a good time, but we shouldn't be taking any L's.
Right. Especially now with the village in a deficit. I mean, that's just
Right.
not
That's
your fiscal
not.
responsibility.
Yeah. No. That should not be the case. So those are things that we're going to have to revisit during the budget process, and to talk about what success means. So, success for me with my background normally means in the green, right? And so, that's just my take on it.
Absolutely. Well, Trustee Jones, we've taken enough of your time. I'd like to thank you again for coming on and returning to our podcast. You have an open invitation, my brother. Anytime you'd like to come on and talk about anything that's upcoming as it relates to the Villge of Maywood or the great things that you're doing outside of being a trustee, the tour proviso, or even your election to the board. It's now it's called Walther Christian Academy, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Again, congratulations to that. But I'm going to give you a minute or two with any closing thoughts, anything upcoming, or anything you'd like to share with your constituents.
No, I mean we've had a great discussion. Thank you. For always giving me an opportunity to talk to the residents and to be able to use your platform to have honest discussion. I just want to say these are just my opinions, but people elected me, so I want to make sure that they have my honest take on things. And my take is that Maywood is going in the right direction, but it's still not good enough, especially for our residents that have been here for a long time or that are interested in moving. We need to make sure that we increase our standards. And so, I'm here to do that. I want to make sure that I'm advocating for the right things, and that we're from my perspective, we're getting the best return on investment. So that's my job, and I'm gonna, I want residents to hold me accountable and hold the board accountable, and that's my take. So the last thing I'll say is long live Chairman Fred. Your memory lives on. December 4th, 1969 is an important day in the Villge of Maywood and in our country. And so my closing thoughts are to think about his spirit and his ambition, and that you have that in you. I mean, so that'd be my closing message.
Nice. What a way to end the interview with Trustee Jones, make a tribute, Chairman Fred Hampton. I'm encouraged by growing up in the Villge of Maywood, being part of the recreational park, Central Area Park District, also known as the Villge Park District, growing up playing minor league baseball, little league baseball, senior league baseball. Through the activities of the Villge of Maywood Park District, I met some great individuals, Terry Murphy, Robert Bond, Keith Brown, Ricky Stewart, Blair Walker, just a whole host of brothers and young ladies as well. But together, coming from different areas of Maywood, we formed a wrestling team. And it was a bond that was established in elementary school and through the Villge of Maywood, through the parks. And together we formed a bond on the mat. And then ultimately we became state wrestling champions, undefeated in 1986, which is one of the greatest feats in Proviso's history, considering the fact there was no youth wrestling program in the Villge of Maywood. And so winning the state wrestling championship in 1986, some 40 years ago, is a groundbreaking transformational experience that many of us were able to take advantage of up to this point in our life after high school. So the celebration is taking place tomorrow at Proviso East, where they're taking on Addison Trail. They're going to remember us and celebrate us, our 40-year anniversary. Other wrestlers who went through the program, they're going to celebrate all former wrestlers as well. I wish I was there with you physically, but it doesn't look like I'll be able to make it. But I will be there in spirit. And I'm doing my own coaching here in Northern Virginia as head wrestling coach here. We have a wrestling tournament on Saturday. So much love to Pirate Nation and Proviso East wrestlers. And on that note, thank you for tuning in to the Let's Talk Maywood podcast on Diversity Today Media. I am Dr. Reggie Ratliff. Until next time, God bless you. Be safe out there. Drive safely in that snow. And God bless you. Good night.